business class days when we pick up an article and you talk about current events. I know last time we promised about mental health, so I'll definitely touch on that as well. Some feedback along the length. So we went for 2 hours last time. We had a lot of fun. I don't mind 2 hours, but some of our listeners were saying that that might be too long for them. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do 2 hours and then we'll just condense it, do some editing, and cut it down.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do like a highlights version in the future, right? Chop out the key parts that I don't know you and me thought were really interesting. I certainly think there are some parts that were really interesting in our first episode, but I think that's really good feedback. We'll certainly take the feedback from our listeners and make it lengthy enough to before people start falling asleep. But I don't know. I think the commotion you and I caused, Kenneth, I don't think we can make people fall asleep.
I know. I think there's a lot of interesting, a lot of good feedback. Yeah, not much negative. It was all good, and it was a lot of good things that happened. I think I think I got a job offer from this.
You did.
Someone reached out and was like, "Hey, I like what I heard, and here you go. I want to interview you." So for all the millennials out there, and I was telling some of my mentees, I'm like, "Hey, YouTube's the new resume. Start a channel. Start do this. I mean, we just came up with it last week, and episode 1, right? We just started spitballing." And next thing I know, I get an offer.
It's a video. It's a video resume, right? It's like that.
It's a video, exactly.
It's like that episode of How I Met Your Mother with Barney Stinson. You get that video resume, and you just put it out there, and all you have to do is have all the twirling awesomes, right?
And mind you, I was telling. I mentor a few students, and I was telling one of them. I was like saying like, hey, they're like, oh, do I have to send a resume, to you, for this opportunity that you have? I'm like, no, like what you're doing right now is perfect. Resumes, you can spend 20-30 hours writing on this piece of paper and I don't know who you are. You get live onto a 1-hour chat. I'd rather do that. That's more real to me. I can ask about things than a piece of paper. Nowadays, you can hire someone to write your resume, right? Like you can just do all these things on resume. Like it's not real to me anymore. Like good for big corporations because they look for keywords and you can sift through things. But for me, I'm like, no, just let's get real, get on the camera, tell me who you are, and let's go there. And then I was sharing that story with them, kind of like, hey, look, I went live and we had a recording. Someone watched it and was like, hey, I like what they have to offer, and boom, right? So anyways, how do you want to do this? So budget.
You want to talk about the budgets that came out maybe sometime this week or earlier this week, being Saturday. I think it came out like maybe Tuesday or something, but there are a few key pieces I think you really want to talk about for our listeners, to kind of highlight any key sections that you think are pretty relevant. Obviously, there's a few pieces of the budget. It's quite lengthy, but why don't you start on it? I think you want to talk about this new savings account.
Yes. Now, should I share screen with the article, like the Globe and Mail, or should we just kind of
whatever you want, man?
Go ahead. Whatever I want. Okay. Let's share my screen on the. Where is it? I don't want to share something. I mean, I've closed all the windows, so I think
don't share anything you're not supposed to share, right?
I know. You know what? I can't find it, so I'm just gonna go. By.
I got it. You got it? I'll send it to you in chat.
Okay. Cool.
Take a look.
Awesome. Oh, you've got like the dry version. Like the like I went to the Globe and Mail, like, let me maybe I'll just do a quick Google search. There we go. This is easy. Are you should I share the screen with you or
yeah,
let's do that. Let's do this. So Globe Mail, great paper. I read it every day. So really, like I wanted to kind of focus in on the housing, the new, I think they call it the first time home buyer savings account, FHSA. So they've been talking about it for, I think last election promise they had it, and I was kind of like, another one of these like gimmicky things. But getting into the detail of it, and again, depends on how the banks and everyone kind of gets on it. just like with the tax-free savings account. But I mean, in concept, it's great. I mean, it's like the combination of RSPs and TFSAs. Like I had clients before asking me, "Is like, should I put it in the RSP? Should I put it in TFSA? Like, which account should I put it into when I'm saving for my first home?" And it was always a struggle. It's like, okay, how much income do you make, or this and that. But now they create this new first time home buyer savings account. And if we were to make some assumptions, thinking it's probably 18 when you first get to do this, and it's like $8,000 of limit every year, and unlike the TFSA, it doesn't. There's no carry, or the RSP. There's no carry forward to it. But you get a tax deduction. So it's like a hybrid of RSPs and TFSA. So from what I'm understanding, you put money into this account, you get a deduction for that year, and then it grows tax free until you withdraw it out. So I mean, it's very interesting. It's definitely like I mean, I love it. It's great. I know. I mean, there was some kind of not what it's not contradicting. It's like opposing views of how like, oh, this a lot of the first time home buyers, they interviewed them and they said, oh, it's not for me because the cost of living is so high. How am I supposed to save up 8 grand?
Arguable, yeah.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
then and what have you, right? But I mean, for those who can, I think this is a great tool. I mean, when you're kind of deciding between the two accounts, now it's like no brainer. If you're buying your first home, just go put it into your first time home buyer savings account. Get that 8,000 right off, and then have
Mhm.
it grow. Now more details to come, but from the initial kind of thought into it, like look into it, looks great, right? 2023 is when it's going to launch. So some more time there. But overall, I think it's a great concept. Again, if your goal is to save for that down payment, I know $40,000 nowadays is not much to the down payment of a home.
Oh,
Um,
geez. Well,
but
I was just looking at real estate. Unfortunately, it was gone before I even looked at it. Right? It was a what? There's two of them. It was the exact same price. They're $400,000, one bedroom, one bathroom. Nice, good area. I mean, one was downtown, one was on the west side, closer to the Marpole area, and 400,000, which would for any to get out of the CHMC premiums, I mean, it'd be $80,000 down, right? So, I mean, as a starter, especially if you're 18, 18, 19 years old, I think it's 19 that you could open this account. I
yeah,
believe it is. I'm speculating. Um,
yeah,
it's definitely, it would take priority in going forward, right? For most individuals over the TFSA and RSP at this point, right?
yeah,
Granted, if that's even their end goal,
yeah,
to be a homeowner. Not everyone wants to be a homeowner, right? Some
yeah,
people,
yeah.
I've talked to some individuals, professionals at the end of the day who, have the ability to purchase a home, but
Hmm.
maybe they like the nomadic life at the end of the day where they want to see that change up. But no, they're always going to be paying that fair market value of cost of living, right? Of rent, going
Yeah,
forward, right?
yeah.
But this is definitely a
No,
good
no, no.
account. It's definitely a good account. It's it is restricted though to first time buyers,
Which
right?
sucks, but I
It
mean,
sucks. It
they're
sucks for
trying to.
people like you and me,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. Like, why can't it be like an investment house account?
Well,
But of course, they're trying to stop the speculation in
yeah,
the real estate market. But I mean, if they truly wanted to help, first time home buyers, I think it's not this account, to be honest. I think it's that supply. I mean, there's another thing where they're increasing the supply of homes, and I
yeah,
think they've started to kind of I don't think that 2-year ban, to be honest, is going to do anything, because there's
hmm
just too much loopholes to be like, oh, if you're a student or you're this and that,
yeah,
you're exempt from it.
yeah.
So that's just kind of
We've
the
seen that
pros
in
of that.
both BC and Ontario with the foreign investors. That no, there's so many loopholes to get around it, and all the data
Yeah,
comes out and says, "Oh, only 5% of the buyers represent foreign buyers," right? But
right.
like you and me know that's not the case, right?
Yep.
Like you look at the. I mean, I'm privileged to look at the commission reports, and
Right.
the buyers are not local, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless what the data says, and the data is it's so curved at the end of the day because all you need to be as a permanent resident, right, to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
considered as a domestic owner, right?
Yeah.
So.
And to add to that too, right? Like there's another item on the item too about assignment of contracts, and you and I both know, before they kind of put that 12-month limit on there, that's the shadow banking, so to speak. Like people just flipping contract after contract,
Hmm.
looking for that line item on assignment clause. What's the, one, is it 1%, 3%, is it $500, whatever it is. That
Yeah.
that's, so let's not even talk about foreign, let's talk about just locals kind of looking for that.
Yeah.
And so I mean they're tightening the screws a little bit there, but you and I both know, Canada, natural resources, but I think the second thing that drives the economy is housing. So the
Second,
government, the
uh,
second, you think it's number one?
well, it's arguable. I don't have the data to support it, right? But at least in the last, 10 years, right? I
Yeah,
think it's been real estate that, which, drives the Canadian economy at this point, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's basically, it's building versus, at the end of the day, it's measured in GDP, right?
right,
And
right,
production at the end of the day is so widely, I mean, this year, I mean, 2022 at this point, oil has come back tremendously, right?
yeah,
But I mean, if we're looking at the last 10 years, right? Oil has done, terribly, right?
yeah,
Right. It's only come back due to, a situation in this world right now. But,
hmm,
what's really driven GDP or production is, the construction industry, really, right?
yep, yep,
Specifically the major cities, right? Oh,
yeah,
really, Vancouver, Toronto, if we want to put it in terms of major cities, right?
yeah,
For where the market has really taken off, right? But going back to this, first time home buyers credit, I think it's, to reiterate, I think it's wonderful, right? I
yeah,
don't think it's enough at the
no,
end of the day, right? Because
no,
look at it. If you're a first time buyer, right? No, forty
hmm,
thousand dollars it can help, right? And if you have two partners in the situation, 35 grand from each of their home buyers plans is $70,000 now, right?
yeah,
No, so no, if what you said earlier, if they can actually save that money at the end of
yes,
the day to have $110,000 down, obviously they're incentivized at it at this point because depending on their their marginal tax rates or their income levels at the end of the day.
right,
There's incentive to contribute to these accounts to get that deduction, to get that refund, and
right,
recycle that refund to put back into your RSP or your first time home buyers. I guess it's FT. What is it? FTSA.
yeah, FTSA, yeah,
FTSA, whatever it is.
PFSA,
Yeah.
FTSA,
But at the
RSP.
end of the day, if they can get $110,000 down, that's wonderful because that would mean at this point, they can get a 10 or 15 year old 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom condo, right, in the Lower Mainland, right, which is nice as at that point is nice as a starter home, right.
Mhm.
Um, but at the end of the day, you made a very good point at the beginning of your conversation. Are they even
Mhm.
able to save this much money at this point, right?
Right.
Because cost of living is so damn high, right?
Mhm.
For to tell someone it's like, oh, can like put away $1,000 a month, right? Well,
Right.
like if no, we're talking about the working class here, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they're going to work. They're making, and I'm going to go back to the first episode where they're making the $60,000 salary, right? Going home with $3,800 a month, right? 5 grand gross. Go home with 3,800 for one individual, of course, right?
Yeah.
And if we're two individuals, it's 7,600. But I mean, a good portion of that would go to their rent, right? For them
Yes.
to no. I watch these two YouTubers. They're in Toronto. They're on
Right.
CNBC.
Mhm.
Uh, that money how like money make it or
Mad
something.
Money?
Yeah, no, make it, CNBC make it, right. And
Oh,
they're
make it,
these
okay.
they're these two, a couple out of Toronto, and like they live in basically a studio apartment to keep their rent
Mhm.
as cheap as they can, right. But not everyone's
Right.
able to do that, right. Like if you're
Right.
telling people, oh, it's like, oh, put away $1,000 or $2,000 a month, right. Like
Right.
sure, that's saving 12 grand a year, right.
Right.
But we're saying to these individuals, put away, like, let's just say they're fresh out of university, they're 22 years
Mhm.
old, right?
Right.
We're telling them to put away 8 grand into this new account, right? We're telling them to put away, let's say 5 grand, like no, let's just be generous, 5 grand into their RSP, which is
Right.
$13,000, right?
Yes.
To basically, we're telling these people put away $13,000 a year for let's
Yeah.
just say 7 years, so that by the time they're 29 7 times 5, they maxed out their home buyers plan, right?
Mhm.
And but within 4 years, they would have 5 years, they would have maxed out this first time FTSA, whatever it is.
Right.
Like sure, they're 29 years old now, right? But
Yeah.
only if they have that amount of money to put away. And
Mhm.
the biggest problem we've had over the last 10 years is people are putting away money, but the prices keep going up,
Yep.
right? And that
Yep.
really is the source of the problem. Not, this may help at the end of the day. I don't think
Right.
it's a solve all, right?
No. And I mean, just look at the other program that the feds had in the equity sharing program. I don't know. I don't remember what the exact name of it, but they even in their budget was saying like, yeah, that there was not enough uptake or intake, not intake. What is it? The like just participation in the program.
Mm-hmm.
The whole like, oh, you put in 10%, they'll match a 10%, but they share in the equity. So as it increases, the government, when you sell it, they get a portion of that increase. And of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
it's the dream, right? Like, oh, this is kind of the government dabbling into real estate. But people are smarter than that, and they're like, no, I'd rather come up with my own down payment and keep that equity to myself.
Yeah.
But they said they're gonna, revamp the program a little bit to make it a little bit more attractive. But I mean, something kind of came to mind when you were talking about kind of affordability and all that. And mind you, this is not a provincial, right? BC, Ontario program. It is nationwide. So we have to also keep in mind, homes in kind of, the prairies, all the East Coast and all that. I think those will go a far way if you have that $80,000 down.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
It's just
definitely. Like even
it's just in
even
Vancouver
no,
and
like
Toronto.
okay, and maybe that was my mistake. Like it was my bias first of all because
Right,
I live
right.
in Vancouver and on the West
Yeah,
Coast, and like housing here stinks, right? But
yeah.
certainly if you're like in we don't call it the Midwest, but I mean if you're in
The prairies, the prairies.
prairies, right? If you're in Calgary, if you're in Edmonton, right? Like that
Yeah,
$80,000 would go far, right? Like
yes,
you can buy a pretty nice 3,000 square foot home, right,
right.
for like 600,000, relatively
Yeah,
new, like good lot size as well, right? So that will definitely take you a lot further, right? But in the I would say specifically Vancouver and Toronto, like this
yeah.
is it's not going to do anything, right?
No.
Right. So I mean, it's good for them to attempt to do something, and
Yes,
$40,000. It's quite it's a good amount, right?
right,
I think that's a really fair amount, right?
right.
If there's anything beyond that, like we're talking like $100,000, it
Yeah,
that's ridiculous at this point, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I think 40,000 is fair. But it's not going to help. The I don't know how many people are in Ontario. I think there's like 8 million people in Ontario. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help 3 million people in BC, right?
Nope, no, no.
Regardless of where you are in BC, like
Yes,
if you're in Trail, BC, right, it's still not going to help you, right? If
nope,
you're in like
no.
Port Alberni, it's not going to help you, right?
Well, I
But
mean, Kelowna. I was looking at Kelowna there. I mean, some pre-sales there for like a studio for about in the low 300
sure,
thousands.
yeah,
So potentially, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, again, when this whole program takes off and stuff like that, not so much, but yeah, bits and pieces. But
bits and pieces. It really does depend where you are in this country,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
it's not. I mean, it's meant to be an umbrella, right?
yes,
The
yeah,
umbrella, it's not going to cover all, right? It's meant to
right, right,
cover a good, intended to cover a good portion, which I think it did.
right.
But at the end of the day, it's terrible for me to
It's a
say
sup-
for the
yeah,
important for the important places. It's not going to help those 11 million people, right? Which
yeah,
is no,
no,
it's a third of the country
no,
at the end of the day, and if it covers 2/3 of the country, maybe it did its job, right?
right, right. And it is, like I said, it's a federal program, so I think that's kind of where that kind of target was set. But mind you, I mean, if you kind of scroll down a little bit in the in the budget, I mean, housing again, I think it's always talking to local realtors and all that, they all mention like supply is always an issue, getting permits from city governments and all that. And so again, the government attempting, I don't quote me here, I'm not looking at the
Mm-hmm.
article, but I
Sure.
believe those around 100,000 or 200,000 homes in X amount of years. I think that's a better attempt, right? It's a supply. I truly think it's a supply issue. I don't think, or yeah, it's a supply constraint issue, and there's all this demand. And so if truly to tackle this program, I don't think it's, the down payments and stuff like that. I think it is the increasing the housing supply, increasing kind of new ways, if this piece of land, everyone wants to live in the two cities, the Vancouvers and the Torontos. How do we kind of, that's what one mortgage broker was telling me, is like, yeah, Vancouver is always that grid, right? Like you've got the North Shore, you've got the Surrey, like that's just it. Like this is kind of the area. Like Metro Vancouver is as big as it's gonna get.
Yeah.
So the only way to, increase supply is like, yeah, you combine a bunch of houses and, you build either towers, quadruplexes,
Hmm.
duplexes, and that's kind of the way to go, right? And so
But I
yeah,
think it's
that attempt.
crazy. I think it's crazy. Like, it's always been Vancouver, right? Is,
Yep.
it's the place to be. Therefore, you'll pay the price, right?
Hmm.
Recently, I saw a condo in Surrey, and we're talking
Yep.
Surrey Central, right? So,
Yep.
uh, I would no, Surrey Central has gotten better, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's been redeveloped. They got the hospital there. Simon
Yep.
Fraser's there. UBC's
UBC's
coming.
coming.
UBC's
Yep.
coming, right?
Yep.
What I saw, it freaked me out when I saw a condo for more than $1,000 a square foot in Surrey.
Yep.
That like when you see that kind of pricing, right? Like, it was funny. Like a colleague of mine said, "Hey, let's go get into some pre-sales. Let's go into Surrey. Same rationale. Sure, UBC's coming.
Yeah.
Hospital's there. Simon Fraser's there. Middle of everything, right?" And I said
Right.
to him, I said, "Who on earth would want to spend $1,000 a square foot in Surrey, right?" And it's funny. Okay, so I saw this posting on my newsfeed, right? And I see, I think it was like maybe 600 square feet, like low 600 square
Yep.
feet, right? And it was posted for like 660,000 or something, right? One
Yeah.
bedroom, one washroom, right?
Yeah.
And I saw the posting. It was like just listed like this.
Yeah.
I like rolling my eyes. I'm like, who's gonna
Yeah.
pay that kind of price, right? 5 days later, just
Sold.
sold. I'm like, mind blasting. It's like, are you serious? So like, it's crazy. Like, like it always been like the rationale, like we're rewinding 5 years back, right? We're rewinding,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
we're saying, like, if you can't live in Vancouver, like you don't have. Not everyone needs to live in Vancouver. That's the thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You don't need to live in Vancouver. You can move out to Surrey, move out to Langley, right? There were more
Yeah.
affordable. They were more affordable
Were
options, right?
were.
And in 2021, I started seeing like townhouses in Surrey, like 1.3 million. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like Vancouver is like gone at this point, right? With like
Yeah.
detached houses, 1.7 million on the east side, right?
Yeah.
Surrey and Langley no longer affordable, right?
Nope.
So like
Nope.
programs like this again, right? It's not helping, right? No, it's like I said, meant to be an umbrella. It's not helping everyone, right?
No,
And
for sure.
like there needs to be more done on a different avenue as opposed to maybe it's government intervention that's needed, right? They
Right.
can't push this responsibility that you as the individual, you as the taxpayer, is
Yeah.
responsible for saving your own skin in this game to
Right.
to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think what's happened over the past 20 years, it had nothing to do with the individual, right? The
Hmm.
individual acted based on free market, right?
Right.
They saw
Yep.
low interest rates twice, right?
Yep.
20 like post
2008.
2008, post
Yep.
20, post like 2020, I
2020.
guess,
Yeah.
right? And they took advantage of those low interest rates, right?
Right.
And that had nothing to do with the individual, had everything to do with federal policy at the end of the day. And
Right.
when you let free market roam free, they're gonna take everything with it, right?
Well, I mean, interesting you brought up interest rates, because I was just browsing this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
or not this weekend, this past week, and because headline got me right, 11-year highs on the 5-year Canada bond yield rate, right? And that's usually kind of
Yeah.
what the banks take, for their 5-year mortgage rates. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of quickly checked, some banks, and they're now at 3.94%.
Yeah, I saw 389. So
Yeah,
what we saw, like I confirm what you saw, like 5 year
yeah,
fixed,
and yeah,
389,
5-year
394.
fixed.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I was reading an article this morning. It was just saying that, yeah, it's the quickest kind of, you talk about stock markets rebounding quickly in 2020. well, like I think over the last like year, like the basis points like jumped by half. So like
Mhm.
the benchmark rate was not this, like it just was. It's again unprecedented, and again, it's I've never seen it. As long as I've been at the bank, that it's spiked. Like usually it's gradual, right? But like
Yeah,
no, this time around it's fast and furious. So
yeah,
before when they were saying, oh, there's gonna be 8 rate hikes this year, I was like rolling my eyes, kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, right. Like they always kind of threaten this, and then it never
yeah.
happens. But then now this happens, and I'm like, oh, maybe we're in for a rougher ride than I thought we were. And they were
Well, a
saying
lot
next
of
week,
them,
right?
yeah, a lot of people are going to get squeezed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like next week, with the rate decision, they're saying like, yeah, it's not going to be 0.25, it's not 25 basis points. They're looking at 50 basis
yeah,
points
I heard that
for
too.
variable.
Whether or
Yeah,
not they do that,
yeah.
like we don't know at this
Well, we'll
point.
see,
Yeah,
right?
we'll
We'll
see.
see.
Yeah,
But I mean, with the 5 year, benchmark being the way it is, right? I'm just kind of like, wow. It's I mean, and that I mean, that's what I was expecting in 2020 was like, okay, people are out of jobs and stuff, the
hmm
market housing is gonna definitely cool, right? But no, we had
no,
all
it
these other
didn't.
programs
No,
like,
but you had
yeah,
low
we
interest
talked
rates.
about, yeah, we talked about kind of that in our last
But
episode.
I mean,
Um,
everyone wanted to live at home during the
right,
pandemic, right? So that
right.
fueled additional market demand, right?
Yeah, and it
Demand for
actually
housing.
brought people back
Yeah.
home too, because a lot of people, right? Again, last episode, they came home because they couldn't cross the borders and stuff like that. And they're like, wow, we can work from home now. So it doesn't matter. I don't have to live in Vancouver. I can live in these more affordable places like
hmm
the Surreys, the Langleys, the
Yeah,
Abbotsfords,
but that drove
Chilliwacks.
up demand over there and basically
Exactly.
raised the prices in the
Exactly.
valley.
Exactly. So it'll be very, very interesting how this all unfolds with kind of, again, I think may not be this year, but next year and the year after, because the people that were doing 2 or 3 year, I mean, there's 3 year variable rates, right? So people kind of banking
Yep.
on, okay, I'm gonna hedge my bet a little bit, 3 years, I'm gonna relock in my
Yep.
variable. Good luck.
No, they're gonna
It
get
might be
squeezed. And
four or
you know
five
who's gonna get
percent.
screwed the most are those who carrying significant HELOCs
Yep.
who had basically used their HELOCs to buy real estate, right?
Yep.
And I don't blame
Yeah.
them. If they did that 10 years ago,
Hmm.
beautiful, because you would have made the appreciation. You could, if you sold your house and the market dips, you're probably still 60, 70% up today, if not 100%
Yeah.
up, right? 10 years ago, right? But I'm saying those people who took out big HELOCs, and I'm saying like maybe 300,000 times 2 or 3 condos, and they have a
Yep.
$900,000 HELOC among 4 properties, right?
Yep.
And they've enjoyed 2.45, 2.7% up until
Yep.
the last hike, right? And
Hmm.
these guys are going to get squeezed, like 4.65, 4.9 by the end of 2023, right?
Yep.
And it's fine, right? I mean, they no, the ones who, like I said, the ones who've had real estate for the past 10 years, they can sell a few houses, offset some of the debt, right? Pretty easy,
Yep.
right? But I'm saying
Yep.
those who basically took advantage of the low interest rates during the pandemic, right?
Yep.
And bought a couple existing condos, right?
Yep.
For the purposes of renting them out, right? And in
Right.
our market, like rent is really good in our market, right? But
Right.
they're gonna get, like, those who live on a very tight, salary based income, like
Hmm.
the rate hikes are just gonna eat into the cost of living at this time, right?
And
And
and that's the, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
and that's that. No, I was just about to finish there. Like, that's the scary part at this point. Like I fear this could turn into an Australia, like what happened in Sydney, right?
Yep. Yeah, and to your point, right? That's the thing. Like people don't realize, it's like the example of that frog boiling in hot water, right? It's like the water, they're in the pot that's boiling, but it's like warm, and the next thing you know, the frog's dead because it's cooked at that kind of
Yeah,
hot temperature.
yeah,
And that's what I worry about these HELOCs, is because they're just paying interest. So as long as we're able to pay the interest, we're able to service the debt.
yeah.
They think they're okay, but they're not, because if they're coming fast and furious, and they've warned, right, it's coming, and then everyone's just rolling their eyes. But I mean, I was rolling my eyes because they've warned this for the last, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, and it's just never happened. But I think this time it's
Well, it's
happening,
coming. It's
right?
around the corner,
It's
right?
coming.
And
Yeah.
the eight hikes, and the 8 consecutive hikes that they're calling for. It's not a matter of when, right?
Yeah.
It just place it on your calendar, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's coming, right? And
Yeah.
like 3.89 that we see today, like
Yeah.
we're gonna see 5-year fixed rates again, or no,
Yeah.
5% fixed rates again, right? And that
Yeah.
wasn't too long ago, right? Like
Yes.
5% fixed rates, that was like 2006, 2007,
Yeah.
right? like,
Yep. Just
like
yeah.
right before the
I was in high
financial
school. Yep.
crash, right? And
Yep. Yep.
like, I remember seeing a high interest savings account like 4% at Royal
Yeah, I
Bank,
missed
right?
those
Like,
when they're
those,
actually high
and
interest
those are
savings
high,
account,
like, yeah,
not the
your
0.1%.
tangerine accounts, like, the GICs, they're coming back, right? But
Yes. Yep.
with inflation, like, if we're measuring true inflation, right?
Yeah.
Like, your rate of return on these 4%, 4% high interest accounts, if inflation's like 5 or 6%, you're still
Yeah.
negative. You're still
-1.
negative. Yeah, you're still -1, -2. You're still losing money, right? But I mean, I'm guilty, Kenneth. I took out HELOC money to buy condos
Hey,
and
same
buy
here.
stocks, right?
Same
Like,
here.
when 2020 hit, and I
Yeah.
saw, when I saw negative oil, or like, yeah,
Yep.
negative oil. I mean, I didn't buy on March 23rd. I bought
Yeah.
exactly 3 months later on June 23rd, right?
Right.
And I've rode all my financial stocks to the moon at this point, right? And I still
Right.
hold them, right? Like, some of them
Yep.
are like 30 to 100% up at this point, right? And
Yep.
the argument is, I mean, like real estate, I can sell them and offset my debt at this point, right?
But why would you?
But
The
why would
bank
I?
with in an increasing rate environment, the banks are just gonna make more money.
Well,
And
if we're in a recessionary environment as well, though, banks don't do
yeah.
well in recessions, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag as to how
That's true.
financials will do in the coming, 1 or 2 years, right? Plus, banks
Right.
just got taxed, right?
Yeah, but they reduced it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, it was lower than expectations, right? They knew it
Yeah.
was coming, right? But no,
Yeah.
banks got hit, right? And I mean,
Yes.
I saw a big, negative red chunk in my portfolio this week. But like
It's a
at the end,
buying opportunity.
no, it's not.
Disclaimer alert. Disclaimer alert. I bought. Okay.
I wasn't.
Personal bias. I bought.
This wasn't. I wasn't going into winners and finding something 40% off, right? Like, it was like 3% down. Like, at the end of the day, like, no, it wasn't really a buy. It wasn't truly a buying opportunity, right? Like,
Yeah.
like 2020 was a buying opportunity.
Yes.
2008 was a buying opportunity, right?
Yes.
And you don't see those like that often, right? It's like,
No,
not every day is walking into like Marshalls or Winners and getting that deal, right? Like, but
Yeah.
it's a matter of controlling debt, right? Like,
Yes.
it's so scary how this rising interest environment will affect those who have right now, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, those who have don't really have. Like, who has is the bank, because the bank
Yeah.
owns their house at this point, right? But
Yes.
it's scary. It's scary as to those who leverage themselves to the tilt at this point, right?
Yeah. And just again, from a financial planner, my advice is start deleveraging, because the day of reckoning is coming.
Well, that's what the U.S.
And
Fed is doing, right? They're shrinking the balance sheet right now,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's a sign, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a slow sign, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not. They're not going to like shrink their balance sheet overnight, right? But
Right.
it's an indication that the
Yes.
individual should probably start looking into that, right?
Yeah. And I remember kind of, I think I was not, yeah, I was kind of laughing at you in a way, like, oh, you're working to just pay down your mortgage, and I'm like, why would you do that? And like with 1.64 1.74%, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I'm the leverage guy, right? I'm like, no, you borrow that money, you make 4 or 5%. But yeah, if it starts getting up to that 4% mark, I'm like telling myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing what Brandon's doing. I'm gonna get my guarantee 4%, because I don't know what the market's with, like, what, squeezing maybe an extra 1 or 2%. I rather than at that point, I'm not dumping in the markets. I'm just gonna pay down my mortgage.
Yeah, but why? It's exactly that. Like, if you're paying a 5% mortgage, why don't you get a guaranteed reduction of a 5% return that you can't deduct, right?
Exactly.
That you can't deduct. I mean, you could in certain circumstances, right? But versus leveraging for investment income that you would pay tax on, right?
Yeah.
It's almost plus you're exposing yourself to risk for holding those investments at
the roller coasters, man. Like, if I can just pay something and it's like guaranteed 5% return, in my mind, is a no-brainer.
Well, that's called a bond.
Yeah, right. And so I mean, bonds are like down because of the low interest rate environment.
Yeah.
But now it's like, what, I'm gonna now pay pay down this debt, because I want to now own, and that's something too, right? Like whatever you have a debt on, that's kind of there's a saying where that's kind of like you're a slave to, right? If you have a mortgage, you're technically, a slave to the bank because they own, you have to kind of have that repayment. I
Sure.
know sometimes people, don't think about that. It's like, oh, I own my home. But it's like, yeah, you
Well, the
own
home you live in
part of
is
your
not
home, right?
an asset, right? It's a
Yeah,
liability, right? And
yeah,
like Guy Kawasaki would tell you that, right? The home you live in is not it's not an asset, right?
yeah,
Like you don't generate income. Like to be an asset, you have to generate a benefit, right? Straight
yes,
definition of an asset, right? And maybe the
right,
benefit is you get to live in it, right?
yeah,
Sure, but it doesn't produce income unless you rent out the
yes,
basement, of course, right? But for
right,
the most part, the home you live in is not an asset, right?
yeah.
Although our parents will tell you it is, right?
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, our parents are probably, or that generation is like, yeah, this is my nest egg. I'm gonna sell it, and then live off of the equity on it, right? That's kind of, I mean, my clients are in that retirement age, was all telling me that, right? When I told them the bad news, there's three things you can do, right? Either you, sell your home. Number two is, you reduce your retirement expenses, or number three is delay retirement, right?
yeah.
And all of
And
them
all
are
three
like,
are
yeah,
relevant. All three are relevant.
yeah,
They can do all
yeah,
three
yeah.
in all seriousness, right?
And then it's all kind of like, and again, that's why it's like so hard working with kind of the people who wants to retire in 2 3 years, right? They're like, oh, tell me what I can do, and I'm like, I'm not a magician. Like,
Yeah.
there's this is it. These are the three options, right? And I'm like, like if I was working with you, like, 20 years ago, right? Then we will have more options with compounding and all this other stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
like, honestly, this is it, right? And yeah, it's just sad.
But
It's
the only
just
thing
sad
that's
that, like, they have to.
guaranteed in this whole scenario is your debt, right?
Yep,
Debt is
yep,
guaranteed, right? Like
yep,
your investments, your real estate, and your my financial stocks, for
yep.
example. I mean, they've done well, right? And
Mhm.
if I sold them today or if I sold them during the next crash, I will still be up. I'll still have
Yep,
capital gains, right?
yep.
But the market value of those investments, whether it's real estate or stock, is never
Mhm.
guaranteed. Whereas your debt really is, right? Like you have to
Yep,
pay that amount, right?
yep, yep.
Um,
It's an obligation.
but this upcoming squeeze, man, it's like every what they're saying every 25 basis points, it's going to cost you like on the average Canadian, it'll cost the average
Right.
Canadian like $400 a month, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if we're saying eight hikes, 25 basis points, right? We're talking
Yeah.
$3,000 of interest to service, right? That's expensive.
Yep.
That doesn't come out of thin air. That comes out like you're not getting a raise equal to the interest rate hikes,
No,
right?
no,
And
no.
I've seen some companies at this point haven't like they are anticipating into next year doing a revamp of their salary ranges, right? Which
Right.
is good because they got to keep salaries in line with inflation, right? Or else your
Yep,
employees will leave, right? But at the
yep.
end of the day, like you're not getting a raise equal to the cost of living, right?
No.
Unless you
Yeah.
choose Great Resignation, jump companies for a raise, right?
Right.
But that itself is work, right? And
Yeah.
are you willing to just leave your company? A lot of people want to spend years at their company to loyalty at the end of the day, right? And there's
Yeah.
a lot of individuals who just don't care about that, right?
Yeah, or
right.
comfortable, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, that example, right, of my parents, they have a brand new spanking house now, and
yeah.
just not willing to leave their old home, at like their shack.
Well, they're saying
Yeah.
it was just on the news like yesterday, right? Like our military our military service people, right?
Yeah.
They have not had a change in their cost of living allowance since 2009,
Oh, jeez.
right? So, like, can you imagine like the inflation that they're going? Like, let's just say their cost of living allowance is say like, let's just be generous, 3%, right?
Right.
And they're
Yeah.
going through like a 5 to 6% environment right now, right?
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed for the last like what is it, be 12 years at this point,
Yeah.
13 years, right? Like
Yeah.
like union workers will get
Right.
squeezed,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they can negotiate and argue, whatever like union pay they need, right? But
Mhm.
they will get squeezed, right? Because
Right.
their contracts are typically locked in for like 5 years, right, or 10 years,
Yeah.
depending. Probably
Yeah.
5 years. 10 years is too long, but and that's gonna you know it's gonna cause the government to print more money, right? Because money just doesn't what our federal leader says. Taxation's the way to go, right? Right? Who cares about making money, right? Just tax the crap out of the people, right? And you tax the crap out of people, and you can redistribute those funds accordingly, right? You can pay
Yeah.
the wage hikes of the unionized government employees at that point, right? But it's just going to be a ripple effect, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like the worker gets their raise, right? The teachers get their raise, nurses get their raise. Like, good. No, both sectors are underpaid, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion.
No, I agree. I
But
agree with you.
at the end of the day, like where does the money come from? It really is just a tax on the future, right? You print more money, you
Mm-hmm.
tax the future, and who gets screwed? Your future generation, right? You're just kicking the can down the road. That's all it really is.
That's always what it is,
Right.
right? It's just like not my responsibility.
Well, it'll be whoever's next party leader, right? It'll be their
Yeah,
responsibility, right?
exactly.
Right.
It's all about the legacy,
And
and
then
it's
they
like,
argue
yeah.
semantics about whose fault it was, back and forth. It doesn't matter if you're Canadian or American, right? Whether Democrat, Republican, or liberal, conservative, right? The argument of semantics is saying that they point fingers at each other and they basically blame each other for problems they each caused.
Yeah. Anyways, anything else we want to talk about in the budget? I think it's I guess real estate is just dominant. I think
Real estate's the dominant. I mean, there's a few
dominant
things. Yeah, there's a few things in there that not a few things. There are a lot of minor things, right?
Yeah.
They've redefined small business. Small business being redefined from a $15 million company to a $50 million company, which is
Right.
quite large, right? It's quite a substantial, definition, right?
Yeah.
And the small business limit hasn't changed, right? No, the
Right.
first $500,000 is taxed at preferential corporate rates,
Right.
different from every province depending where you live in. In BC, it's 11%, right?
Mhm.
But to change it from 15 to 50 million, and your small business limit's 500,000, like how much are you really saving to stash away to call it 50? I mean, it's good that they did that, right?
Mhm.
In all fairness, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, like it gives a big breath of fresh air for the definition of what a small business is today.
Right. And more to it, can you kind of walk the non-accountant people, like, so what is this, like 500,000 and like 15 to 50 million? Is that the revenue, or is that
No, it's profit, actually. It's profit.
Profit?
So
Okay.
basically, all small businesses in Canada, your first $500,000 of profit is subject
Right.
to 11% in BC, right? I think it's like 14 or 15% in Ontario, right?
Right.
And like, you make $1, you give 11 cents to the government, you keep 89 cents, right? And
Right.
that's that story at the end of the day, right?
Right.
Where you begin losing that 500,000, if, for example, on the old rules, if you're making 15 million, if your business is worth $15 million, right? And that could be,
Right.
that could be equipment, it could be investments, it could be, build land and building, your office, your warehouse, whatnot, minus all your debt on there. So all your mortgages and everything. So think of a typical manufacturer who makes like toys and wheels or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have a factory, they got building and everything, right? And their land and building have gone up significantly, right? Like
Right.
for the past couple of years, right? And they make these investments into capital at the end of the day, right? And under the old rules, if your business starts hitting beyond 15 million, right, that first 500,000 of what your income is subject to, right, starts shrinking. So if you're making, say, $20 million, only the first 400,000 is tax free. Oh, not tax free. Sorry, not tax free.
9%.
First 400,000 is subject to 11%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 11%.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
So I mean, it
tweaks,
did a big service to the definition of small business, right? But again, it doesn't really help small business a whole lot, because there's not a lot of small businesses out there who even have $15 million to their name. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely does not help the accountant at the end of the day. It doesn't help the financial planner, right?
Yeah.
It does not help the lawyer. It does not help the doctor, right?
Yeah.
It could help, a regional paper factory. And I'm thinking of The Office when I say that, right? A regional paper supplier, right? It could help that kind of business.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I guess like yeah, little not little things, but like the social stuff, which again caught my eye and just want to bring attention like dental care.
Dental
With
care is
the
a big one.
NDP,
Yeah.
yeah, NDP and Liberal Alliance there, and I think that's good. My son, he's gonna benefit your son too. By
Depends
the
on
end of
our
this year.
income levels, though. Right, and they haven't well,
90,000.
they haven't oh, did they
90,000.
iron that out? Because I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
they
90,000.
said it's still not final, like they need 8 more months or something for them to iron out the
Oh,
details, right?
interesting.
But I won't qualify. I pay myself around $90,000 a year to pay my mortgage, right?
Yeah,
Money comes in, money goes to
yeah,
mortgage, money goes to groceries, right?
yeah,
And at the end of the day, right, like, I live on, bare scraps at the end of the day. I wouldn't say bare scraps. I do okay, right? But no, I won't
yeah.
qualify at the end of the day. It's
Right.
based on a household. And no, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's meant for, I wouldn't call it low income, but it's basically meant for the living wage individual, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Who isn't quite, like I said, Kendall, if you're making, a $90,000 household at the
Right.
end of the day, it's
Yeah.
pretty hard to live in any major city,
Yes.
right? Like, that would
Yeah.
basically mean like two couples making 45 grand, right?
Right.
They'd go home with about 29, let's just say 3,000 a month, roughly.
Right.
Combined
Yeah.
salaries, that household is making 6 grand, right?
Right.
For them to pay rent, they're paying, $2,500 in rent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, 500 to $1,000 in groceries, utilities, cell phones, whatnot, right?
Right.
Their savings is probably, 1 or 2 grand a month, depending on
Right.
emergencies, right? Like,
Right.
it's meant to really help, like, the living wage individual, as opposed to, you know, your accountants, your financial planners, your doctors, your lawyers, right? But no, in all seriousness, like, dental care, it's a basic medical need, right? I think
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
was long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, those people who can afford to pay for it should pay for it, right?
Right.
That's the
And then
socialist system we live in, right?
yeah. And there's the insurers too, right? Like don't
Yeah,
forget there's group insurance and stuff like that. I know
yeah,
there's like the small again, talking about small business and stuff, maybe they're not able to offer it, but if you work for kind of a medium sized plus firm, they usually have some sort of group benefits plan for you, which
yeah.
I mean, before this announcement, that's what I have for my family. So it wasn't like like this is amazing kind of thing, right? But I
Mhm.
can imagine, for those that don't, right? It's good.
Yeah. But clean vehicles is still on the radar. They're not going to be
Yep.
scrapping that one. So,
No.
they're still pushing really hard on their, I forgot what you call it, their clean targets, right?
Yeah.
But
Emission
yeah, emission
emission
targets, right? I
targets.
think
Yeah.
that's 2050, right? But,
Yeah.
I mean, I drive an EV.
Hmm.
I don't drive a Tesla, but I drive,
Right.
a Kia EV. But I mean, at the end of the day, an EV is an EV.
Exactly.
There's some electrical problems with it at this point. It's only a year old. But nonetheless, like, at the end of the day, like, I see a lot of electric vehicles on the road in Greater Vancouver, right?
Yes.
It seems to be, like, there won't be a street from one street to another that I drive by that I don't see a Tesla at this point,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And the incentives are there. That still, they're still offering that 5 grand off, of
Right.
an electric vehicle. And good for them, right?
Yep.
But how they going to dispose of those batteries?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
That's kick it down the can type of situation. I think. Right? It's like don't know. But I mean, speaking of that, I mean, I don't know. I've really enjoyed this current event segment, and maybe we'll wrap it with this, and then kind of move on to kind of what we promised our listeners,
Right,
about
right.
health and all that. But the last article I want to bring up is an article about how I don't know if it's city of Vancouver, but they're like saying they're gonna fine. Did you read about fining the gas stations for not
I saw that. Yeah,
providing
yeah.
for finding the electric charge stations $10,000?
I was like,
Something
what are
like
you
this.
talking about? So you're gonna fine a gas station for not having an EV charger, which is a direct competitor to their business. Like, what are you thinking? Like, oh my god! Like, I was telling my wife, I was scrolling up Google News, right, my
Yeah,
Google News feed. I was telling
yeah,
my wife, I was like, get this, it's like that gas station is gonna get fined because they sell gas and they're gonna not allow an EV car to charge there. Like, what are you thinking? Like, but no, I get you, I get you.
Yeah, which is I think I don't know. That's if it, yeah, if it is, I think if this is city of Vancouver council, I mean they come up with the most funniest. I mean they were gonna um make people pay for overnight parking. They're building bike lanes.
I like
I
the
don't
bike
know.
lane idea, quite frankly.
Yeah,
I know a
well,
lot of people were against it, right?
yeah,
Basically you're taking out basically streets. You're paying money to build these bike lanes that are only
yeah,
used for 4 months of the year. You're not gonna bike when it's snowing, when it's raining, when it's like negative, when it's icy, right? In the
yeah,
wintertime. A lot of these are not being used. But no, the idea is right. I think,
yes,
well, my opinion
yes,
again. I think the
yeah,
idea is correct at the end of the day, where you're establishing bicycles, e-bikes, e-scooters,
mm-hmm,
those standing e-scooters, right?
yeah,
It's a step in the right direction if you believe in the whole clean emission targets
yes,
to be a serious thing. If no,
yeah,
if it fits within your your I don't want to call it consciousness, right?
yeah,
If it aligns with your values at the end of the day, right?
yes,
Then
values, yeah,
it definitely is the right way to go. And I think a lot of Vancouver people would agree with that view,
yes.
except for the implementation.
Well, the cost around it too, right? And again, another article is like a lot of the major events had to reroute from the Burrard Bridge. Me being a half marathon runner, the route's different this year for that event and
Hmm.
for Sun Run and everything like that too, right? So
Yeah.
yes, I get it. But there's also practical. It's like, is there a better way to do it? So, it doesn't cost, all these events that it's marquee events, right? Sun Run, half marathon, BMO
Hmm.
half marathon, all these other events, right? Like it has all these, I guess, unintended consequences that when they're implemented, again, good thoughts and good good intentions, but then realistically, is it practical, right? But
Hmm.
wow, we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll go right into hour two with mental health.
Sure. You want to kick it
I
off?
I guess we're not gonna. I mean, again, I just love we just love talking, and I think the last topic we talked about was we were concise and everything, and I don't know, maybe that's what we'll do. Like one segment we'll do current events, and one segment we'll do something about our lives or like mental health and yeah, whatever. Well, I mean, offline we'll discuss, but yeah, sure. What would you like to ask Brandon about mental health and how would you like to start this topic? I'm an open book.
Well, I guess it stemmed from our last, our first episode. We ended, the episodes mentioning to our viewers that we would talk about mental health, right? And it's a serious issue among mental health can be interpreted so many different ways, depending on your definition of it. I mean, one of the big ones a lot of teenagers and young adults would go through is the keyword is depression, right? Everyone goes through depression, right? Another keyword, one of my best friend who works in this area. Well, he doesn't work in this area, but he's a very open. He talks about the subject a lot. Would be the word anxiety, right?
Yep.
And how anxiety affects a lot of people. In all aspects of their life, careers, work, relationships, and whatnot, right? So really, I guess you brought up the topic of mental wellness or mental health at the end of the day. I guess what situations have you experienced in your life that made you want to talk about this topic?
Yeah, I think I mean we can go all the way back to how I was brought up and all that, which caused I think a lot of these anxiety and depression and all that. And right now working with a therapist is like kind of uncovering all that, with
Sure.
with my wife and I. I'm so thankful for the work that the therapists do. Like thank you, thank you,
It's
thank you.
often underlooked,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
there's often
And
a negative connotation to it as well, right?
oh, negative thing, 100%.
Like I'd
100%.
say it's super brave of you to even admit that on live stream, right? But
Yeah.
no, to my regard, like good on you to even talk about the situation, because people look at with a negative connotation, right? And at the end of the day, like, it's not talked about enough, right? And it doesn't
No, not
matter
at all.
really what aspects of life you walked along or came from, right?
Hmm.
Like, a lot of people don't talk about it because, there's always the people don't like admitting they're weak, or admitting, or even asking for help, right?
Yes, that's hard.
So well done for you to even bring that up.
No, no, thank you. And it was definitely not an easy journey, and maybe that's where I'll start is, the first time I guess I came, to the realization I had depression was probably when my in my first year of university.
Young
And
adulthood.
with
Yeah.
young adulthood, right? And there's a pattern as I kind of talk about it. But it was kind of that big major change, right? Like from high school, kind of I didn't move out. I was a mama's boy, and I liked kind of the free meals my mom provided at home and the laundry and all that. And so I decided, to commute.
Sure.
Even though it was an hour and a half, to from Coquitlam all the way to UBC, I did that.
Brutal.
And but very brutal. I don't know. I mean, I would tell my younger self why, like just go and make your own meals and just go rent a place. I don't think rent back then was like 1,800. It's probably like $1,000. It was affordable, right?
Sure.
But anyways, besides the point. And at that point, it was yeah, so I think a lot of I don't know how to deal with change. I think I grew up kind of, everything was structured for me, everything was kind of done for me, and so that was the first major shock in my system. I thought, being in the IB program, they say they'll prepare you, and I guess academically they did, with the workload and time management and all that, but definitely not kind of, the preparation of, being amongst again, like, and I was told this kind of when I was in university, is like, yeah, you're amongst like the top 20% of people in high school that, usually go to university. So you're not just, it's normal to be average, right? But for me, it wasn't normal, right? For me, it was like I was always top of the class, I was always best of the best. And for me to get my first B, right? Because all throughout
Oh
high
no.
school,
B
yeah,
is bad.
B is an Asian fail, right? Like there's memes and all these other things about it,
Yeah,
and
I know
and
what you
it's
mean.
like, and it's like, oh my goodness, I got my first B, and I'm like, am I not good enough? And I had these again programs of like, I'm not good enough. This is not good, And again, like my parents never like spanked me or any of that for
Yeah.
not getting an A. But I think in my mind, I just had these programs of not being good enough if it wasn't an A that I spanked myself like emotionally.
Sure.
And I think I kind of gave myself such a hard time that it was like, people were like, Kendall, you're okay. It's okay, right? Like B is above average, right? You're not average. C is average. You're above average. And I'm like, no, I want excellent, right? Excellent
Yeah, yeah,
is
no,
my
I
standard.
get you.
And so yeah, so for I mean, like again, in first year, so I came to, I mean, I probably would self-diagnose myself as my first encounter with depression, but I didn't go see any counselors again, because it was a stigma, right? I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I can't be, especially back in those days, right? No, there was no, Naomi Osaka and Carrie Price, all these kind of major people talking about that openly, or like people from big companies.
Hmm.
I know, like I think KPMG has like a mental health kind of like a partner that kind of spoke, right? It wasn't that open. It was kind of like again behind closed doors kind of thing, and so it's kind of like, no, I can't be having a mental illness. No, that's not me. Like I'm, again, not wanting to admit weakness, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's really the motivation, is really kind of like, what, like let's get it out there, let's talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. And it's okay that, I mean, I've learned throughout the years, it's like a common cold, right? I mean, yes, there's a lot of negative stigma to it, but I think depression, you really need to just kind of have the support of friends. And it's amazing once you kind of like just tell people that, it's like they don't like look at you weird like, oh, what. It's like, this wave of support. It's like the opposite, right? What I thought would happen is like, oh, everyone's gonna look at me weird and be like, oh, I'm not gonna be a friend anymore. No, like when I've opened up and kind of asked for help, like drop down my pride and be like, okay, I need help, and this is what I'm going through. It's like the support, and again, you kind of know who the friends were and who the people were, that were just kind of using you for whatever. like it kind of like it just highlights, right? It's like, oh, wait, you're not that smart kid that I kind of copied homework from anymore. It's like, okay, like see you later. And then the true friends who are like, hey, what's going on? Like, how can I help? And all that. And so yeah, to your question on like why I'm even talking about it and all that, and I think it's just, yeah, for our listeners and whoever can come across is like, it is okay. It's really trying to normalize it as like a cold, right? It's like, when COVID first happened, it's like, oh my goodness, the world's gonna end. It's like, because again, that fear of not knowing
Yeah.
what it is and what have you. And so really my intent is to kind of get it out there to kind of describe like, yeah, this is, what depression, at least to me, was like my experience with it, and really normalize it to be like, hey, this is what happened, and it's okay that this has happened. And as a result of what has happened, it's actually brought me to a better place to, fight my inner demon, so to speak. And so that, at least for me, like I can raise my son now better than I ever can imagine, because of the fact that, I'm willing to face, these demons, and face kind of all the trauma that's happened in the past, and kind of heal from it. And I think the more I talk about it, the more I'm open about it, the more healing I get from it. So, am I altruistic? No, not really. Like I'm, the more I kind of normalize it, it actually helps myself as well. So there is something in it for me. But yes, I do also want to help those who are suffering. And I do care, and I do realize, how hard it is, and just want to let those listeners out there know that like I've been there, and I can understand. And it's, reach out, right? Reach out to your friends. Don't fight it alone. I know, being depressed, you want to do it yourself, you want to figure it out. And you just, again, I was closing doors, and I was just kind of like, just let me hide in my room and figure it out. But I know those people who may be going through it like I was like that, and really take that courage to just, reach out and ask for help, and just, tell someone what's going on, right? And whether that be your mom, your best friend, just tell someone, and just talk it out, and what have you. So
Did you ever talk to your parents about this in your early 20s?
hell no.
Hell no.
Hell no. No.
But why
no.
not? The real question is why not? Why or rather, have you approached them, or have you let them know today in your 30s at this point?
Today, yes. Today
Yeah.
we're in a healthier place, and I mean, there was no lying. Like they know, right? They saw, right? Even I think in first year they kind of knew something was up. But really what helped me was like in fourth year, when I was actually clinically depressed, not clinically, but clinically diagnosed as having mild depression.
Yeah.
And really, again, thanks to the pastor, and I mentioned this also in my other podcast that I did with with a therapist friend of mine about, the challenges of being a young father. He really opened the conversation up for my parents. And kind of, again, all he said to my parents was like, hey, this is normal, and it's okay what your son is going through. And I believe he should go to counseling and get some professional help. And of course, they were scared and like, what's wrong with my son? Did I do something wrong? Parenting him, like blah 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 blah. And again, he was that calming voice to them, to say no, like, you've done everything you can as parents, it's okay, and this is a journey that he has to go through. And he really okayed the whole entire experience, and again made it safe for me to go on this journey of counseling. And I think that's why I was so scared of telling my parents, because it's like, oh my goodness, right? Like again, being an Asian person, or person of Asian descent, you don't want to let your parents down, right? At least for me, that's the mindset I had. And it's like, I don't want to bring them shame. I don't want to, be that person that is,
Yeah.
not good enough, and show weakness, right? It's like, okay, no, I'm this A student, everything's okay. And that's what the image I want to portray to my parents, and I want it to be there. And that's why I was fighting so hard to be like, okay, even when I'm not okay, to make it, seem like it's okay. But knowing what I know now, it's like, man, I wish I was like Mei Lin from Turning Red, right? Like just
I haven't
be
watched
that
that yet.
being that rebellious teen. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything there, because she's rebellious in the trailers. But kind of like, yeah, she was 13 years old and kind of doing what she was doing. I was like, oh man, I wish that movie was there when I was, yeah, 18, 19. So, for all those people who are struggling and need a, comedic relief or kind of just, an easy way into this topic, highly recommend, Turning Red. And good job, Domishi, for putting that out, because yeah, it's a great movie. And like, when my son understands, like, that's definitely top of the list for him to watch amongst the all the other good Disney movies that are out there.
So, are there any other avenues of depression that have affected you? Or maybe it's not. Maybe I don't want to keep using the word depression, right? Uh, any other avenues of mental health struggles that you've had in your life that that have affected you that you want to get out?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, depression is definitely the top one, right? And with it, it was an anxiety. I had panic attacks, and again, it all stemmed from the not good enough, right?
Interesting.
And yeah, not good enough, right? Like, it's just, and this was
Why
the
beat
one, and I
yourself
didn't,
up so much, though?
because you were told that, like, you can't be not good enough, right? Like, you have to be the best, right? And then you get an A, and then the parents are like, no, that's not good enough,
You need to
right?
take a
It's like,
step in
where's the
my
A plus?
shoes then. Step in my shoes was not good enough, but I also don't care.
Oh no, oh no,
So I was a
oh
B
no.
student. Okay, I was like
Yeah,
I had one A, a whole a whole bunch of B's, and probably like one C plus, and the C plus was like something I didn't care about.
yeah.
Let me just think about. I don't even remember what my C pluses are in. I had a C plus in science. I remember that during high school.
I had a C plus in personal planning, so
Oh, I got
I had
A's
no
in that
friends.
because
I
that's
had no
complete.
friends.
That's
That
just
was the
bullshit.
comment.
No,
That was
that's
the
just
comment. Go
that.
get some friends.
So we have a question actually. A question came in and they said, "Was your assessment of not being good enough was that from your parents or did that come from yourself?"
That came, I mean, again, this is a recent assessment, right? It was a program that was running in so deep within me, I didn't even know, was there. And so, to that question, I don't think my parents ever said, the words, "You are not good enough."
Sure.
But I think there was a lot of actions that, they perhaps didn't do, or were doing, that gave me that message that I was never going to be good enough, right? And case in point was, like, okay, like, you got an A, right? Or you got
Sure.
like 95%.
Beautiful.
Why not 100? Right? It's like, okay, well, I got 95. Like, can you just say, good job, son? Like, you got 95? No, it's like, you can get 100%. Where's that missing 5%, right? And so, again, like, from the parents, is like, they thought that's the way to love their kids, is because it's like, I want the best for my son. So I'm just
Oh,
gonna
that
tell him to do that.
that just messes them up though.
Yeah, but they don't know that, right? Like
Oh
like
man.
like and the worst thing is, like, then you pass it on to the next generation, because they're
Well,
like,
if
oh well,
if it's not interpreted properly,
yeah,
like if
like,
you hold those teachings that like if you came about and you accepted all your life 95 isn't good enough, and you end up
yeah,
telling your son that, right?
yeah.
Then I mean, it's just ripple effect after, right?
And poor, like, my son, like, I did that to him, right? Like, in the beginning, like, I was like, okay, you're like 6 months, why aren't you walking yet? Right? That's crazy. But I had this expectation of him walking when he's not even supposed to be walking yet, because it was so ingrained in
Uh,
me. I was like, like, oh, like, and then I started doing the program of, you're not good enough, at a very young age.
oh, I don't
And
do that with my son. My son's 2 months old, and I ask him, "Why are you still crying?"
but that's just it, right? Like, it's these things that, like, you again, with the best intentions. I mean, earlier, in this episode, we were talking about, these good intentions, but, bad implementation, kind of thing. It's, again, like, with good intentions, you want the best for your family, and then, again, given what, you kind of just pass on, hey, this worked for me. Yeah, it was painful, but it also worked. So you kind of just pass it on, not knowing that you're also passing on that emotional trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, to that point, it wasn't like, yeah, my parents kept telling me, like, verbatim, you're not good enough. It was just a lot of these other things, things like, the recognition, right? Like, I got straight A's, but it wasn't like a, hey son, good job, right? Like it's, that word of affirmation was always lacking in my life. And
Sure.
that's the thing, right? With the five languages, five love
I
languages, and
know them.
usually,
My wife
yeah.
talks about those 5 love languages all the time.
So and the thing is, like, usually the one that you really want the most is the one that you didn't get as a kid, right? That's and for me it was words of affirmation, like
Really?
just
For
to
me, it'd be physical touch. My parents never hugged me.
well, my mom
But
did. My mom
quite frankly, I don't care about being hugged today. Right?
okay. Okay.
I have a dog. I
Yeah.
like okay, no, maybe I take that back. I like hugging my dog. I like petting my dog, right?
Yeah.
Like okay, maybe that's that. I didn't have a pet growing up and I have a pet now.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But yeah, to that point, yeah, so yeah, that's how kind of those programs kind of come up.
It's
And
kind of
again,
funny though, like you and I come from so different backgrounds. I'll let you know, like, obviously I've gone through like no, I would say moments, no years of depression, also in my early 20s, but almost for entirely different reasons. Okay, so
okay.
I mean, my background, I mean, I was not close to my dad. Okay,
Hmm.
I was very close to my mom to an extent. I mean, there were years during my rebellious teenager years that I had nothing I want, I didn't want anything to do with my mom, right? Things are much better nowadays, right? But
Yeah.
for the, I want to be around, friends all the time, like your typical teenager and everything. I didn't care
Hmm.
about my grades, right? I
Yeah.
cared about, doing good enough, right? No, not getting like, no, not failing, right? Not
Yeah.
getting C's, right?
Yeah.
But B's, no, that's above average. That's good enough, right? And no, that's just my undertaking of it, right? And I never
Right.
had, the reinforcement from. Well, I did to an extent. Like, I got a C in elementary school in art. Like, and I was like, who cares? Like, I'm not gonna be an artist at the end of the day. Like, artists are poor anyways, right? I don't mean that, okay, but you know what I mean. Like, like the
Yes.
typical career, if
Yeah.
the typical
Yes.
keyword people out there,
Yes.
typical careers out there. If you want to make money, you don't choose like art
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So I mean,
Yes.
it wasn't to my concern, right? So I mean, getting B's are good enough. My mom did encourage me. So this is one, like, I don't know if you want to teach this one to your kids. Every
Hmm.
A I got $10. So there's a carrot, there's a carrot stick out there for me, right? I didn't get straight A's, I'll tell you that. Like, okay, I wanted straight A's, right? I had,
Yeah.
I don't know, 7 or 8 courses throughout elementary or high school,
Yeah.
and $10 an A. I might get no, I got A's. So typical. I got A's in math.
Yep.
Okay. To no until like I got a B in math 10. I don't know how, but I got A's in math, right? But I didn't get straight A's, right? And sure, I would have
Yeah.
wanted straight A's because the incentive was there, right?
Yeah.
I still didn't get them because, quite frankly, I didn't care, right? I
Yeah.
didn't spend much money as a kid. I didn't have a job as a teenager,
Right.
right? But I had some spending money from whatever random allowance I got or whatever gift I got from a relative for our
Hmm.
birthdays or Christmas or whatever. I mean, I probably got maybe like $200-300 a year. Of that $200-300, I spent $60 on like shoes, and I might buy like 2 pairs of pants or something. And so I always got gifted T-shirts and whatnot. So I mean, my upbringing was very different in the sense that, like, I don't think my parents were quite attached to my performance. If that's
Okay.
if that's maybe how I'm going to word your situation, I don't know if that's accurate or not. But in any case, like, I didn't really beat myself up to get good grades. I
Yeah.
did enough to get to where I needed to go, right? So
Right.
the typical linear, you grow up, you go to school, elementary school,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter how well you did in elementary school, you got to high
Hmm.
school, right?
Hmm.
how grade 8, 9, 10, 11, those years didn't even matter, right? They're not even looked at, getting into a university. Grade 11 sort of, right? But
Yeah.
grade 12 really does matter at that time. And you can
Right.
argue, how are you doing grade 8 will affect grade 9. How are you doing grade 9 will affect grade 10, etc., right? But I mean, to that extent, like, who cares? What only mattered to me was grade 12 at the end of the day. And I'll tell you,
Right.
grade 8, I probably had 1A in physical education. Grade 9, I had 1A. That was like math. Grade 10, I had 1A. That was probably in physical education again. Grade 11, I think I had 0 A's. I think.
Yeah.
And then grade 12, I had 6 A's and 2 B's. Because that's the year that really mattered. And why that mattered? Well, at that time, I had a girlfriend, right? And at that time, she was going to, University of British Columbia, right? And there was an incentive, follow, your girlfriend and your friends at the time. All my friends, like a majority of my friends went to University of British Columbia. So it made sense. Like everyone was going there, I might as well go there. So, it incentivized me to, I had to get good enough grades to, to follow that, that linear path of getting into a university. It didn't really matter what university I went to. I could have went to Simon Fraser. I had applied to Langara College, whatever, right? But I would get there sooner or later, right? And by the time I got to university at all, I hit the reset button again. I nearly failed out in my first year. Okay, I mentioned in the first episode, like my grade point average in first year was like 56%. Right? You get kicked out at 54. Right? Yep. You get academic probation at 54. Right? Yep. And so I mean, at that point, that's when my depression got kicked in. Okay. Right. So that was a funny year. Like in that year, I broke up with my girlfriend at that time. My grandma died in that year, and I almost got academic probation. So things were a little bit more serious as to like, Brandon, what the hell are you doing? Right. That's when my depression came in. And I didn't know how to improve. Right. Yeah. And I had mentioned last week I had memorized everything to pass my exams. Like I did not, like school did not teach me how to perform, right? Yep. Education failed me, right? Yep. And, I memorized as simple as the concept. I wouldn't understand. You got 5 rows of eggs. You got 7 rows of eggs, right? In that area, you got 35 eggs. I would literally memorize 5 times 7 equals 35, right? Yeah. Like, that's how I would memorize my science, my math, my accounting, my audit, everything. Yep. Zero application, because school taught me how to apply 0% of my knowledge, right? Yep. And like I was going through school, I was studying my ass off, okay? And I could never get beyond like a 70% average in university. Right. I think my second year, I left sciences because with a 56%, there's no way I could become a doctor. Yeah. Right. And why do you go into sciences? To become a doctor. Okay. You don't want to, no, quite frankly, if you settle for anything else in sciences, what could you possibly do? Research analyst, maybe, right? A research analyst will sooner or later get an MBA or an MSc, right? Like, you either do more learning to, get to a bit, career progression at that time, right? So I left sciences because, a 56, for medical school, and I wanted to be a doctor, of course, that's why I went into sciences. You're not going to get into medical school with your first year being 56% because they look at your first 2 years, right? Yes. So, my dreams died at that point. I'm like, okay, Brandon, you're not going to become a doctor. I was going to study cancer. I was going to find the cure for cancer. It never happened. Oncology, different life. But, so I dropped out of sciences. I went to do a Bachelor of Arts, right? And, short-lived, like, I went into economics after, right? And, I found myself, if I couldn't get into, I wasn't going to do political sciences, wasn't good, philosophy. I love philosophy. Okay. But there's no career to do in philosophy, right? I will do a master's in philosophy one day, Kennald. Not today, right? But I will go back to school and do my MA in philosophy one day because I just love the topic. Yep. Different topic another day, maybe. Like I took, second year English. I did all that. And at the end of the day, if I was going to pick any career in, the BA route, it would have been economics, right? And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go into economics. I go into like career planning and everything. I actually did pretty well in economics. I got a B+, which to me was good enough, right? Yeah. It's not an A, it's good enough, right? And I got accepted into the econ major and everything, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be my life. So career planning is like go to like career, like what am I gonna do with an econ degree, right? But you can go work at a bank, right? It's like, oh, it's like, are you serious? It's like, I'm gonna be a teller. It's like, and we talked about this, and you were a teller at one point, but quite frankly,
with a bachelor's of commerce.
Sure, right? So I was gonna go econ degree. I was gonna become a bank teller, and I was like, no, that's not happening, right? Of course, you can progress as a teller. You can become a CFP.
Right.
You can become a branch manager, right?
Yeah.
You could, right? Granted, you take the right steps and you right place, right time type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a bad career progression, but I wasn't gonna finish a 4-year degree to become a teller. Right. It brings shame among my family. Right. It's not like the expectations of me were high anyways. Right. And at the end of the day, like I hit that depression mode because like, what am I doing with my life? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me like virtually like my whole university experience was basically days of sadness because I had no idea what I was doing. Eventually, I got out of the BA degree. Even though I got accepted into econ, somehow I got accepted into the commerce degree after. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, here's the funny thing. I got denied by the commerce minor.
Right.
So econ took me in.
Okay.
I applied with an econ major, commerce minor, and they denied me.
Right.
And then 2 days later, they said, come join us to do your commerce major. And I was like, what are you talking about? So no, that's side story there. Nonetheless, I got into commerce. I started doing a business degree and everything, and I fell into accounting. I didn't choose accounting. Okay.
All right.
I wanted to do finance like everyone else because you wanted to go into investment banking. Not like I had the grades or the brains to do so, but you wanted to be the best. You choose finance. No, I couldn't choose finance, but no, I wanted finance. So no, I chose the next best thing, which was accounting. Right. And if there's anything my mom influenced me by, you can't do marketing, you can't do human resources, you can't those degrees don't pay.
The artsy specializations, right?
I really like human resources.
Me too.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, right? But like my mom basically said, you don't do that, right? So you can only do accounting, you can only do finance, right? So I fell into accounting. I didn't pick my career, right? And believe it or not, I did really well in it. Right. I didn't do well in financial accounting because remember, I was still memorizing my stuff at that time. Right. But I understood and I enjoyed the concepts well enough to understand profit. Right.
Right.
And, by the time I finished, I got accepted with a $27,000 salary, crap bottom of the barrel type of thing. Right. And finally, I kind of understood how to apply my knowledge at my first real job. Right. Best Buy never really taught me anything. Didn't really even tell me how to sell things. It just taught me how to be a warm body at a terminal, right? But finally I get into my first job. I started applying my knowledge, and that's how kind of like I got out of my depression. Was I finally figured out how to do something, and terrible to say, and I said this last week. Like I was able to get out of my depression just by being able to refocus. And that was almost key. I needed a purpose at the end of the day because I had an identity crisis. I had no idea who I was or what I was going to become. Because who I was supposed to become a doctor. Never happened. So who was I going to be? And I had no idea I was going to be an accountant. I mean, my brother was an accountant. My brother was. He was an accountant at that time already, right? And we don't need 2 accountants in the family, but surely enough, I fell into my profession, right? And the focus on getting out of depression was make as much money as I could, right?
Okay.
And it sounds terrible, right? Like it sound like if you tell anybody, like, what is your purpose in life? Make as much money as I can. Like, are you crazy? Like, don't you have any other goals? Right. And you can ask my wife, right? Like, what am I good at doing? I'm good at making money. That's all. I have no other life skills. You tell me to go survive in the wilderness. I've never gone camping in my life. Right.
I'll take you one day.
One day. Right. I have no life skills right now, but the only thing I'm good at doing is making money or finding ways to make money. Right. And that at this point has become my purpose, to make as much money as I can. And there's a limit. I'll tell you that. Like once I hit that number, I'm done at the end of the day. I call it early retirement. Right. And I've had these discussions like with colleagues of mine. Like I have a very good colleague, retired in his 30s. Right. And he basically said, like, like, Brandon, you're striving for this, make as much money as you can, retire early type of thing. Like, what are you going to do with your life after that, right?
Yeah.
And I basically told, these are my words, it doesn't matter, right? I can choose to do whatever I want, right? And he said,
Right.
well, you won't have purpose after that. Like, what are you going to do? You got to do something, or else you're going to go crazy, right?
Right.
And I said, well,
Yeah.
I'll figure that out later, right? And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's like, you're the type of person who will never retire, Brandon. And I'm like, nah, I was like, you're crazy. I'm going to retire. Like, forget that.
Yeah.
Right. But no,
Yeah.
it's kind of scary. Though, like you hear stories, people who retire suddenly just
Yep.
die.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Because no, they just don't know what to do with their lives after that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, am I, it's kind of scary because I could be lining myself back up,
Mm-hmm.
towards that type of life again where I have no purpose. Right. I
Right.
have purpose at this point. I have a 2-month-old son. I got to raise him.
Yep.
Right.
18 years at least.
Got another question. How differently are you going to approach your children on mental health? So maybe this is like, both you and I can answer this. How are you going to approach your children on mental health? What are some key differences you would want them to know that maybe would be very different from what you grew up with yourself?
Yeah, I mean, with
And
limited time.
here's my
Yeah.
question to you, Kendall. When would you even have that conversation with your kid?
Now, and I'll tell you a story
Go for it.
about it. Yeah. But before I do that, and if we run out of time today, if you search my name, right, Kendall Dew, on Spotify, I actually did a podcast about this.
Sure.
The struggles of of a young father. Fundamentally human is the podcast theme, and so I won't touch too much of that topic, as you can kind of I've kind of touched upon kind of like my
Sure.
experiences as a
Yeah.
father and all that. So I'm just going to put a plug in there, for that. But why I say now is because, like, again, like, even like, you're like, how do you have a conversation with your child? Like, now he's 2.5, like he has maybe 1 or 2 words. Like, what do you teach him about mental health now? What you teach him about mental health now is that it's okay to have emotions, period. Right. And
Sure.
the story is this, right? Like, when we went to the washroom, and my son just doesn't like loud noises, like the flushing the toilet just scares the crap out of him,
It
right?
scared the crap out
And
of me too. When I was a baby, I thought I was
right.
gonna go down that swirl.
Yeah. I don't know if
Like,
maybe that's the image he had in his mind, but he just was so scared, and he started cheering up, and then he said the words, "I am sad."
sure.
Right? And me and my wife just looked at each other like, did we hear like that? Like, and like, so she was like, my wife was like, did you hear that? I was like, yeah. Did you hear that? I said, yeah. He said, "I am sad." And I was like, yeah, he said, "I am sad." And like, both of us were so proud of him. 2.5-year-old, right? 2.5-year-old able to name an emotion, right? I am feeling sad. And that's what I mean by teaching mental health. Like, that's how it's going to be different. I think when I was young, it was not okay to cry, right?
Yeah, boys don't
When I was
cry.
crying,
Yeah,
right?
boys
Yeah,
don't
boys don't
cry.
cry, like
Yeah,
that thing. Or you go to a room, right? Like, you
yeah,
shut up, right? Like, don't make me look like, don't make me
yeah,
look bad, right? Like, you just, don't cry, right?
yeah.
Go to a room. I can't deal with you, and or they'll yell at you or something like that to instill fear, so that you bury
You
those
shut down.
emotions,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So how I'm doing it differently is I'm doing the opposite, right? That's what my therapist told me to do. Okay, if it didn't work for you in your past life, right? Then do the opposite. And so with him, I okay the emotion, right? And then so when he says it's sad, instead of being afraid and being like, "Oh my goodness, shut up, don't cry," I encourage it. I'm like, it's okay to be sad, right? What you're feeling right now is completely normal. Like, you're scared right now, and that's probably why you're sad. Like, it's okay. Baba Mama is right here for you, right? Like, it's okay. And just keep repeating, it's okay, it's okay. And so, he had a little bit of tear, and then he was fine, because we reassured him, and let him know that, hey, talking about emotions is okay. Another example this morning, actually, with swimming. So I told him, we had to go meet grandparents for dim sum. And we're like, okay, I have to go, right? And we have to go get changed and stuff. He's like, no, 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 like, like, more, right? And so, okay, one more time, and we have to go. And he's like, yeah. And then so we go one more time, and then time was up. But again, he's like, no, I don't want to go. Like, he didn't say I don't want to go, but he's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Cohen, we made an agreement, right? One last time, we really have to go. And again, he used the words, I am sad. So right now, I think he's associated emotions with I am sad, right?
Yeah.
And again, tears came out and I'm sad, right? And I'm like, okay, it's okay to be sad and completely fine because yeah, you want to stay here, but now we have to go. It's okay, right? And he cried a little bit, but he was cooperative because he owned up to that commitment that he made. And so while he was in my arms crying, he's like, oh, and then I was holding him and he's like, I'm sad. I'm like, yeah, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
He was going through those emotions, big emotions, but he okayed himself. He started reassuring himself. And then like
Sure.
by the time we were in the change room, he wasn't crying anymore. Right? He
Yeah.
he okayed that, he allowed that space for him to feel the sadness. And then basically he's like, okay, I'm sad. And Baba said it was okay. And then, oh, now I'm not. Now
Sure.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so to that question is like, yeah, you just kind of create that space. And again, for someone that's like, triggered or never had that opportunity to create space, it's hard, right? Like when my son used to cry, I would shut him up. I would be like, stop it. Again, from that program of being not good enough, I
Mm-hmm.
interpret it as when my son cries, he was telling me that, Dad, you suck, right? He doesn't mean that, but because of
Yeah.
my past trauma, I took that every time he cries, I'm not good enough. And so I will yell back at him because I was triggered and a lot of other stuff. And then he'll cry even louder, being like, Dad, I'm like, probably in baby language, is like, I'm just telling you I'm tired or I have a wet diaper, I need to change, like other things, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to talk. And the only way to know how to communicate is to cry.
Sure.
And so one afternoon, like he was again crying, he was throwing a tantrum. And again, like this voice of do the opposite is now ingrained in my head. So I was like, okay, I would usually yell at him. What if I didn't, and I just show him love and I just say it's okay, right? And so that's really how I went on the journey of creating a very secure bond with my son and creating that space for not just him but myself to have to be okay in expressing emotion. And so to that question is like, when would I start? Like, you start as soon as you can, and you start by modeling, right? Like when they're babies, they're not going to understand words, right? But they do understand your actions. They understand. I mean, there was an article about how like one dad was like meditating and just kind of sitting in stillness and showing their kids that, yeah, this is what meditation is like. And again, creating that space, creating that safe environment, to okay emotions.
Yeah.
And again, to that question, that's what I would say is, and that's how I'm doing things differently, because in my family it was never safe to express emotions. It was shut it down, right? We don't know how to deal with it, shut it down.
So you were yelled at.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. I
Okay.
was spanked. I was go to my room, right? It's like, don't tell me you're sad. No, they didn't say don't tell me you're sad, but it was like every time I cried, it was like,
Yeah.
just go to your room, right?
That's interesting.
Rejection.
Because that was not the case for me.
Okay.
Like, like we grew up in relatively same time period, right? In the
Yep.
80s, 90s, whatever they may be. Like
Mhm.
I was a giant crybaby, right?
Right.
I just I cried. And no, they say like, no, I don't know who, not they. Articles, science, whatever you want to call it, says,
Yeah.
you let your kid just cry it out, like
Yep.
they're gonna have psychopathic tendencies when they grow up, right? My parents let me just cry, right? It didn't matter.
Right.
Like, if I cry, if I'm sad about something, I would
Right.
never tell them I'm sad, right? I would just
Yeah.
bawl my head off, like to the
Yeah.
extent where I was turning purple, apparently, right?
Right.
And like my parents would just let me show my emotion. And when I say parents,
Right.
I should see my mom, because my dad was never really around. Right? But I mean, I would be allowed to express all my emotions, right? Anger, like
Yeah.
I have a real bad temper tantrum. Like,
Right.
people don't see it. My friends don't see
Yeah.
it. You don't
Yeah.
see it. Like,
Yeah.
my clients don't see it. But I have a terrible temper. I was allowed to express anger and get away with it, right? And I was never
Right.
I was never punished. I was
Yeah.
never hit by my parents once,
Okay.
believe it or not, right?
Great.
My dad had rammed me with a cart once when we were having a little like pit pat, but I was already like 11, 12 years old. Like, I wasn't like a
Right.
toddler, right?
Right.
But I was never spanked as a kid. I was never told
Mhm.
to go to my room, type of thing. I was told to really
Right.
just, at the end of the day, we basically just express everything, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And this is who I
maybe
am. This is who I am today, right? Like I've never had, like, in comparison, like I've never
right,
had the same, you know, uh, events of depression that you've had,
right.
because
Yeah,
I was allowed to express myself the way I was. Not saying that that's no the way to do it, because obviously I have
right.
my own problems, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, like we turned out to be different people, right?
yeah, and
Based on different upbringings.
exactly, and again, it all stems from like, oh, is it that classic joke of, why is it that like every time you talk to a psychologist or counselor, they talk about your past, right? It talks about childhood. Well,
Yeah.
that's there's a study that says like I think for the first 8 years of your life, like 90% of the programming, how you operate and how your worldview is developed in the first 8 years,
Hmm.
right? And like again, case in point, right? Like for me, I was raised in a repressive environment. Like again, it was not okay to show these things, just be the good boy, right? Good boy means good grades and good behavior. And so I was always having to put on this mask
Yeah.
just to perform, to get the words I'm a good boy, right?
Yeah.
Again, going back to words of affirmation, I wanted to hear that I'm a good boy. So in order to be a good boy, I don't cry. To be a good boy, I get good grades and do all those good boy things, right? Goody two shoes, right? That people kind of make fun of. And then to your point, right? What I've heard is like they kind of just let you kind of, again, no boundaries, right? Just kind of go let it out, kind of the opposite of kind of what I experienced. And it's kind of like, yeah, and like just cry, right? And express anger. Like I don't know how to deal with it, but we're not we're not gonna suppress it. We're just gonna let you go out at it. And I think it's that happy medium. I think moving forward as parents, and tell me if you disagree, but I think learning from that experience, I think as parents we need to be that kind of guide, right? Not the tiger mom or the helicopter parent and try to control everything, because that's not going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. No, I know.
But it is to like like I want to be right. I talk to my wife all the time about it, right? I want to get to the point where like when my son grows up, it's like he knows I'm his father, but at the same time he treats me like his friend.
Yeah.
So it's like he doesn't hide things from me. Like
Sure.
again, going back to earlier in the episode where I'm like, yeah, I would never tell my parents that I had depression.
Sure.
Like I would never wish that for my son. I would want him to come to me that, oh, I'm experiencing these feelings, or like, hey, a girl rejected me. What do I do? I have like all the things, good and bad. I want to be able to create a safe environment to be like, okay, let's talk about it. And even if you did quote unquote something bad, all right, then what are the consequences and what are we gonna do about it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, it's frowned upon that you stole, right? And it's like, you're grounded now for 2 weeks. Like, what does that do? It just makes me fearful of you to not tell you that, okay, next time I steal something, I'm just not gonna tell you, right? Like it doesn't build that resilience to be able to problem solve, to be able to do better, right? It like, and then again, like that's really what I want in my parenting, is that we get to a point where it's like, okay, you make a mistake, that's fine. Like people make mistakes, but that's what I really want to empower my kids to do is okay, what are you going to do about it? Okay, you made this mistake, okay, let's own up to it, right? Do we need to apologize? Do we need to do, like, what is it? I'm not going to tell them to, oh, you need to apologize. It's like, okay, here are the options, what would you like to do? And kind of lead them and guide them, and especially in this kind of complex world where it's just like you're going on live now. Who knows, maybe in like 10 years time my son's gonna go on live and start doing random things, and like it's
I
just
think
like
there's an
again the
age
premise.
requirement.
You never know, maybe there's like there's YouTube Kids. Maybe they'll
Maybe.
just like do a like another channel that's like, okay, this is safe enough, or what have you. But it's like yeah, it's just
So here's a curveball, really. Like you touched on the whole love language thing, and I didn't really go that direction earlier, right? And I very surface level, like I kind of know of it because my wife
yeah,
blabbers about it from time to
yeah,
time, right? Like my love language is acts of service, right?
right,
And that was completely fulfilled by my parents. Like they didn't need to
right,
hug me, they didn't need to tell me
right,
I'm a good boy, right?
right,
Like what's the other ones? Quality time, receiving gifts. Like
yeah,
quality time, they weren't really around. They were the type of parents who
right,
were gone 12 hours a day, they came home,
Right.
they slept, and they left before I even woke up, right? And
Yeah.
receiving gifts are the worst gift givers because all they do is they just give us money, right? But
Gosh.
acts of service, right? Like,
Yeah.
like breakfast was there for me every day, right?
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
make a lunch for me every day,
Yeah.
right? Like whether it's a sandwich or something like hot soup in a thermos, like it was
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
They weren't home. Like food was in the fridge. Make your own rice, microwave it. No, food is there, right?
Right.
My mom did my laundry up until I was university, probably. I think
Yeah.
a shame of me, and I remember that because one of my good friends' cousin commented on that. Like, you don't do your laundry and you're 19 years old. Yeah, like I didn't. No, but
Same here.
my
No
mom
shame.
mom covered all of that, right?
Yep.
Dad
Yep.
did what dad could do, right? But
Yes.
at the end of the day, like my one to go back full circle, my love language was it was addressed, right?
Right.
Whereas it sounded like for you, this whole words of affirmation thing was not
Yeah.
addressed.
Hmm.
Is that your love language at the end of the day? This words of affirmation thing, is that
I
your
think
primary one?
I think it's a primary one that I kind of seek because I lacked it. But I think what I need to add is I think also like because I got a lot of physical touch from my mom. Like she will always hug me
Sure.
when I go to before I go to school, right? It's like, there's a hug, there's a kiss, like, we do this thing kind of like grown up. And that's also, kind of the primary, right? So I think to that point, how we receive love when we were younger is probably like your like top, but also the one that you didn't receive and you crave is also kind of up there as well. So I mean, again, I'm not the psychologist,
Neither am
but I
I.
would, but I would say like those are my two, and then I kind of asked is like, where did that come from, right? One was, okay, this is how I was shown what love was as a kid, and so that's why I crave it. Like I crave physical touch, right? And then the words of affirmation is near there because it was, oh, like I never got that, right? And to your point about kind of the missing father, right? It's like my dad was the same, and we just had a spat I think, yeah, this past week, and about that, about the fact that I'm like, you know what, I was talking to my coach, and I was like, he asked me, like, when's the last time that your dad like affirmed you? And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have an answer. And
Mine
all
never.
of my hands up.
My
Yeah,
dad
never.
didn't do any of these 5 bullet points for me. But then again, I have no respect for my dad either. Right?
See, and that's really what I want to kind of repair, right? I mean, and that's why like I started Young Dad Finance,
Sure.
is because a lot of times I think as dads we're like, okay, we're gonna bring the bread home, we're gonna make a lot of money, and so that our family's provided for. I mean, that's how I was brought up, is like this is how men will show love to the family because we don't know any other way. But there are other ways out there, and it's, and to their point about purpose, right? Like, okay, your purpose right now is to make as much money but as possible, and you're like, okay, once you hit that goal, what's next, right? And then you mentioned, okay, in the very next sentence, well, I have this kid to raise up for the next 18 years. And I think that will become your purpose. And I think it's going to switch from just making money to, okay, maybe I want to spend more time with my kids, right? At least that for me, right? Before I was same thing, like, oh, I'm just making as much money, like, money solves a lot of problems, let's just do that. But as my son grows up, and through this COVID experience, just spending all this time with the family, and I'm like, yeah, a lot of my clients tell me, your kids grow up really quick, they don't miss the moments, right? The important moments. They tell me, this, that it flies, right? Time flies. And again, right, like those moments where I put him, like I was like half naked and he's like lying on my chest, right? I don't get that anymore. He's probably my body size now, right? He's not that tiny
Sure.
baby. So Brandon, to you, like, do that cuddle time, right? Because it's not gonna be there, right? Like every time he's like saying he wants a hug, or like a shoulder like ride and stuff, I do it without a heartbeat, because it could be the next day where he decides, you know what, dad, I don't need you anymore, right? And like right
Oof.
now, like in the morning, like during daycare, I kid you not, it's like before I would, like, he would want me to carry him into daycare. And then just recently he's like, dad, down, right? He's like, down. And I'm like, oh no,
Oof.
already?
Oh,
And
shot to
he's
the
like, yeah.
heart.
And he's like running off. And I'm like, oh no, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, no way. I'm like, he's grown up, right? And then, and at like 6 months old, I'm like, why aren't you walking yet? Right. I'm like, please walk, please talk, please do all these things. So, it's taught me to really focus in on the moment and really, really just enjoy the moment, because like the next thing you know, like they just grow up
Yeah.
before your eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like, is there a way, right? Like, kind of like, okay, if money's kind of that central thing, you gotta pay your bills in this expensive city that we live in. Is there a way where, we can find that happy medium where we're like, okay, we can pay your bills, but at the same time, have the time for my family, right? And so that's really, I think why, at least for me, why I started to do this kind of talk show thing with you, and why in my practice I really want to focus on, that grouping, the young dads, really is my target market. But kind of, before that too, right? Like the students, right? It's the, the potential dads out there, the moms, right? If I can meet the mom to meet the dad. I mean, I can't speak to the moms because, I can only imagine what they go through, but like actual mom will probably do better financial planning with them than me. But with the dad, I get it. I get that, you're trying to do your best to show love to your family, and you were just taught that, okay, it's make as much money as possible, and sometimes you have to sacrifice the family to get that done. And I want to say, no, that's not true, right? You can do both. You don't have to sacrifice the family, to make a living. You can make a living and also, have a very robust, relationship, right? And again, I mean, we're close to time here, and I'll probably end with this story. Is that one? I think I read somewhere where, like, the daddy's always working, and just, working really hard, and stuff like that. And then one time, the daughter, right, it just goes up to dad and it's like, dad, I just want you to spend time with me. And it's like, yeah, no, 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 I spend a lot of time with you. Like I'm here with you. I'll do this and I'll do that. It's like, no, dad, like I want your time. Like how much is it going to cost to get your time? And then the dad's like, it's free, absolutely free. He's like, no, 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 no. Like your clients are paying you. And then she dumps her, piggy bank. It's
Yeah.
like, this is all I have. Can I buy an hour of your time that, without distractions, without anything, you just focus on me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, it kind of brings tears to my eyes bringing this story up. But it's like, oh my goodness. It's like, this child is asking to buy an hour, just an hour of the time, just to like, and I think there was like a Korean drama, I think I read on Facebook about how like juvenile crimes is like, kids are getting into crime because, they just want attention. They just want the attention to be on them, and they're doing these things just to get attention, right? And temper tantrums and all these other things, right? It's unfortunate, but we focus when they throw a tantrum, we get their like we give them our attention.
True.
So guess
Yeah.
what? The
Yeah.
kid's gonna just throw a tantrum because that's the only way to get your attention.
Yeah.
And so, do the opposite. It's like, if you want to reward kind of the good behavior, well, anytime they just, speak softly, we'll give them your attention right away, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're just tuned to like the negativity, right? Okay, you throw a tantrum, okay, I'm gonna give you all the attention. Well, the kid's gonna be like, well, this is the way to get your attention.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be bad.
Because that's the way. Yeah, that's their only avenue.
Yeah. And so again, I don't know what our topic is for next week.
Oh, I know what it is.
Okay.
What we're talking about is a perfect segue into it.
Okay.
Hustle culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it perfectly lines up how we actually ended this discussion. Because it's a big problem for me, right?
Yeah.
It's a problem with, for your topics, young dads out there. It's a problem for young people out there, that the concept of hustle culture is now ingrained in virtually a lot of us to get by. And I don't see it as being, a movement that, well, it is a movement. A lot of people are bringing it to light at this point. And 10, 20 years ago, it was the thing to do to get ahead, right? Mm-hmm. But I think, speaking of what you're saying, like a lot of us have to find that right balance, right? Because, growing up, I'm not going to say growing up, well, the last 10, 15 years, we were
Mhm.
all taught to work, beyond overtime to
Right.
get ahead, right?
Yep.
Do more than the person next to you to be a little bit better than them, right?
Yep.
And then the next person who comes along, they'll do a little bit better to be better than you, right?
Right.
And it's a vicious circle, right?
Mhm.
So I think, being able to weigh work time and family time, like how do
Yep.
you find that balance? And I think, a discussion around hustle culture could be very valuable for our viewers.
Yeah. And I challenge that, right? Like I'm gonna bring this up next week. Now that you mentioned kind of hustle, it's like, it's a challenge to rest, right?
Yeah.
Against this, right? And that's the, quote unquote, not medicine, what do you call it? The not diagnosis, but yeah, the cure, I guess, to
Yeah.
hustle culture is rest.
Sure.
You're not gonna
But
like
but
it.
a
I'm not
lot
gonna
but a
like it.
lot of people can't rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but and we'll talk about meditation and all this other stuff because I'm trying to get that into into a daily routine. It's so hard, but it's so good when I do it. Like the day becomes so much more clear. And yeah, it's because of hustle culture that it's like you gotta do, go, right? Like you feel so bad. At least I can't say you, but for me, it's like, oh man, like my wife's like, weekends are for family, right? And I'm like, well, I'm starting a new business, like, just let me
How do
go.
you weigh
Go.
that?
Yeah, how do you
Right?
weigh that, right?
Like,
But it's so good when I can do it, right? When I can spend that 100% focus on them. It's like, my colleagues are burning out like they're like young guns, right? Young
yep.
guns going at it. And then like sometimes when we have our weekly kind of chats and stuff, they're like, yeah, I feel so burnt out. I'm feeling all this. And I'm like, how come I don't feel that, right? And I'm like,
Yep.
oh, the antidote is, my wife telling me, you gotta spend time, with us, you gotta rest, right?
Yeah.
And it's just you get so much more effective. It's contrary, like how do you rest and it makes you more effective, but like again that like like balance,
Yeah.
it's the juggling, right? It's the juggling that's got to happen, and prioritizing and all that sort of stuff. But no, good topic. Looking forward to it. 9 o'clock as always.
As always, I'll see you next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a good night, Kennel.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye bye.